George and Mildred had just had their first day in heaven. And what a wonderful day it had been. On earth, they had both been keen golfers, so they had been delighted to discover that heaven consisted of this most beautiful golf course. And they had played their first round on that golf course, and it had been the best round of their lives. The driving straight down the fairway, 300 yards, right down the middle. Their approach shots, immaculate. Their putting had been to die for. You're way ahead of me. And now they were at the 19th hole on the deck looking out over the most glorious sunset with the sky turning pink and orange and purple. They were having their cocktail. It was just the end of the most perfect day in heaven. And Mildred turned to George and said, "Oh, George, aren't you glad we made it here?" And George said, "Yes, Mildred. And if it hadn't been for your darn wheat germ, we could have been here years ago." Most religions have some kind of teaching about what happens after we die. They have some concept of reincarnation, perhaps, in which we return to this life in a different form, perhaps dependent upon how well we had done in this life, until finally we reach nirvana and we're let off the merry-go-round. There's the Christian concept of heaven and hell, a place of reward or punishment. And then there's also the belief that when we die, that's the end of all of our personal consciousness. We are a brief flicker of life, and then that's it. But especially in the Western world, there is this concept, this idea of heaven as some place of, a static place of eternal bliss, as a reward and compensation for the trials that we've endured in this life, as reunion perhaps with those that we've loved, who knows. Although I have to say, if there is a heaven, I really don't want to go there. Can you imagine anything more hellish than having to spend all of eternity with those people who in this life were so convinced that heaven was exclusively reserved just for them? Those humorless, self-satisfied imposers of their own beliefs. The climate might be better, but give me hell for company any day. But there is people have developed ideas about what happens after life, and some people have some very literal ideas about it. And I remember about 40 years ago, there was a knock on the door, and there were two people on the doorstep. Now, normally, when Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking on my door, I discover I'm really, really busy with something else, like filing my nails or something. But these two young Jehovah's Witnesses were particularly attractive young women. I found I had time. So we got into conversation, and they showed me the latest issue of The Watchtower. And they pointed to an illustration. There was an article about what heaven was going to be like, and they pointed to an illustration of a lion and a lamb lying down together, and they said, there it is, the lion will lie down with the lamb. And I said, well, that's a lovely metaphor. What do you mean, metaphor? That's how it is. Then I realized that my nails really were in urgent need. So for some people, in some religions, the anticipation of heaven, or perhaps more pertinently, the avoidance of hell, is a primary motivation for going to church. Now, if we were to have a poll here of what we all believed about what might happen to us after we die, I suspect there would be a broad spectrum of belief. And that is as it should be. But I suspect that none of us is here this morning because we are wanting somebody who's keeping a register of attendance to be doing that, to note, oh yeah, they were in church that Sunday, we'll give them a tick. So that when we get to the pearly gates, we can report that we got an A+ for attendance. I suspect none of us are here for that reason. I don't know what I believe about what happens after we die. I suspect the rational side of me says it's the end of my personal consciousness. But there are other people whose integrity and intelligence I do not doubt for a moment, who give witness to other experiences. People I know personally who have had near-death experiences, for example, and who have spoken of the bright light, people at the other side beckoning them over. And it does seem to me, even though physics was a subject of which I was terrible at school, but one thing I remember is that you can't destroy energy. You can only convert energy from one form to another. Now, if there is such a thing as spiritual energy, it therefore seems not unreasonable or inconsistent to me to suppose that you can't destroy spiritual energy. You can only convert it from one form to another. Is that so? I don't know. But it seems not unreasonable to me to suppose that it might be so. And the fact that I have not personally had an experience gives me no right to negate or dismiss others who have had an experience. But what I do know is that whatever might or might not happen to my personal consciousness in a next life, if there is one, that is not the determining factor in how I want to live this life. This life I want to live for its own sake. Which raises the question, why come to church if not to get a visa for heaven? Especially now if a visa can be overturned by an executive order. Well, it turns out that there are benefits in the here and now. Benefits for our health, physical, emotional, and spiritual. In an article called "Does Spirituality Make Us Happy?" Brian Walsh writes, "Scientists have found again and again that those with a spiritual practice or who follow religious beliefs tend to be happier than those who don't. Study after study has found that religious people tend to be less depressed and less anxious than non-believers, better able to handle the vicissitudes of life than non-believers." A 2015 study by researchers at the London School of Economics and the Erasmus University Medical Centre in the Netherlands found that participating in a religious organisation was the only social activity associated with sustained happiness. Even more than volunteering for a charity, taking educational courses, or participating in a political or community organisation. It's as if a sense of spirituality and an active social religious practice were an effective vaccine against the virus of unhappiness. And he goes on, "It may not be what you believe or how you believe it that protects you from unhappiness, so much as the fact that you believe at all, and that you practice those beliefs with other people." In a survey of US adults conducted in 2006 and 2007, researchers led by sociologist Chae-Yoon Lim of the University of Wisconsin found that 33% of those who attended religious services every week and reported having close friends at church said they were extremely satisfied with their lives, while only 19% of those who went to church but had no close connections to the congregations reported the same satisfaction. Lim is quoted as saying, "The evidence substantiates that it's not really going to church and listening to sermons that makes people happier," which is just blasphemy, "but making church-based friends and building intimate social networks there," which kind of reinforces what Anthony Trollope wrote in his novel Barchester Towers. He wrote, "There is perhaps no greater hardship at present inflicted on mankind in civilized and free countries than the necessity of listening to sermons." There was another study that reported that there was both good news and bad news about churchgoing. The good news is that apparently churchgoers tend to have lower blood pressure. The bad news is that apparently churchgoers tend to have sex less frequently, which could be the reason for the lower blood pressure. But is the idea of happiness as a goal even appealing in itself? The American ideal apparently is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet it seems that the very pursuit of happiness is what is making us unhappy. As our standard of living tends to rise, so tends to rise, apparently, our level of dissatisfaction with life. We're told to buy more. The next toy is what will ultimately seal our happiness, and we buy the next toy, and what do you know? Doesn't work. We're told to make a bucket list of all these great experiences in life. We make our bucket list, we do all those experiences, and yet life still somehow seems unfulfilled. Maybe happiness as a goal is what is making us unhappy. Maybe what is more important than happiness is meaning and worth. I was given a wonderful little book a week or two ago called The Science of Happiness. One of the chapters is about parenting. And in that short chapter, parents were asked about their experience of being a parent, and nearly all of them said that it had been one of the most rewarding, if not the most rewarding experience of their life. But those of you who are parents will know the truth. How much fun is it to change diapers? How much fun is it to clean up puke? How much fun is it to lie awake at night worrying about whether your teenage child is safe? And the expense is damnable. And yet, parenting can include times of extreme unhappiness and be a source of deep meaning. Because happiness is not a goal in itself, it's not a destination, it's how we feel when we're on the journey. There's a story of another woman who had died. I'm sorry, a lot of people are dying in this story. And she woke up the next morning in a room filled with the most pure white light, wonderful soft furnishings everywhere, and she thought, I've made it. And an angel dressed immaculately in white came in and introduced herself and said, welcome to this place. Let me explain how things work here. Here you can have anything you want. You don't even need to ask for it. You just need to think that you might want it, and it will be supplied for you. So that's how things work here. And the woman thought, fantastic. She thought, you know, I'm a little bit hungry, and immediately there appeared a table full of all of her favourite foods, meats and vegetables and salads and fruits and desserts, her favourite wines. It was just the most exquisite banquet that she could imagine, and she ate until she was fully sated. And then she thought, you know, after a meal like that, I need a little nap, and so suddenly there appeared the most comfortable bed that she's ever slept on. She had the most wonderful nap. She woke up and thought, you know, it's Super Bowl Sunday. I want to watch the game. So immediately this huge screen descended from the ceiling, and it was a game of the Super Bowl, and the 49ers won. See, now you know it's a make-believe story. And it was great. It was the 49ers, all the passes were fabulous, the touchdowns were spectacular, it was just great. And she thought, you know, this is the place. Well, this happened day after day, after day, after day. And she started to realize that, you know, this food was fabulous, but she had never felt hungry. And those meals that she had most enjoyed were those that when she had come to the table, she had been hungry, had felt that she had somehow earned. And, you know, she had never felt tired. She missed the experience of being tired, so that a sleep would have that extra value. And watching the 49ers win game after game after game, and knowing that they would win, where was the fun in that? Because the whole point of sport is not knowing who is going to win and enduring the losses to make the wins even more enjoyable. And finally she thought, I can't bear this any longer. So she summoned the angel and said, you know, I don't want you to think that I'm ungrateful, because you've been fabulous. You know, the food is wonderful, the decoration, the entertainment, you know, it's all I could ask for, but, you know, actually, I'm really bored. And I want to go to the other place. I want to go to hell. And the angel said, where do you think you are now? There is no place more awful to imagine than a place where we have no challenge, no work to do, where it's just endless gratification of our own immediate pleasures. Am I happy with the political situation in this country at the moment? No, I'm not. I'm appalled. I look at you Americans and I think, really? But then I look at you and say, no, you're excused. You're from the state that voted most heavily for the other candidate, and you're UUs. And though this must always be a place where political diversity is as valued as theological diversity, we must always be true to our own values. And those political choices can be different ways of fulfilling those shared values. And what we have now is a direct affront to what we value most about the respect for and dignity for all people, the decency, the honour of community. So am I happy? No. Mind you, after this last week and the phone call that your president had with my Prime Minister, I'm expecting to be deported any day now. And I salute you as a congregation for voting to be a sanctuary, for collectively accepting that you have a responsibility to rise up, to make our shared Unitarian Universalist values real in a world which urgently needs those values. So am I happy? No. Part of the reason I would have preferred another result to that election 3 months ago is it would have been a justification for my own idleness. I plan to retire this coming summer. I planned to retire last summer until Leslie grabbed me by the scruff of the neck. But I have a reason in retirement to get up in the morning now, because I'll be volunteering weekly as an escort at Planned Parenthood. I'll be part of the San Mateo Immigration Rapid Response Team, responding to immigrants under direct threat of incarceration, deportation. I've already written letters, emails, made phone calls to senators, congresspeople and others that I would never have made had I not felt the need to make them. And I've made donations to organisations at a much more generous level than I would have done beforehand, because those organisations are acting on my behalf. More than that, they are acting on your behalf. None of which would I likely have done in my retirement in a different political climate. I would have excused myself for being lazy, self-indulgent, useless. I would have told myself, well, David, you were a minister for all those years, you've earned your rest, kick back, enjoy. Not now. Now I've been called to be of use, which reminds me of Marge Percy's great poem. The people I love best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with shore strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives in that element, the black sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlour generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in and the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry as a person for work that is real. The work of the world is out there, folks. It's real and it's waiting. It's waiting for your shoulder at the wheel. It's waiting for you to strain in the mud. Will you help to pass the bags along? Will you help to bring in the food? Will you help to put the fire out? Will you be of use? 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 Do we even have a choice? Amen.